All right. All right, well, let's get into our message this morning. Have you ever been asked to do something that you knew was going to be hard to learn how to do? Like in a job, maybe they gave you a new thing to do at work, and you're like, what? How am I ever going to learn how to do that? That's hard, right? Well, back in 2005, me and a group of other college students, we went to China on a mission trip, and they told us a lot of things about getting us ready for China that I was intimidated about. They said, when in Rome, what are you supposed to do? Do as the Romans do. And so they said, hey, when we go to China, we need to do as they do, including the way they eat with chopsticks. And he said, if you don't know how to use chopsticks, you need to learn, because they're not going to give you a fork over there. It's chopsticks or starve to death. And so they gave us actually a bowl of peanuts and said, here you go, start practicing. If you can pick up one of those peanuts, shelled peanuts, if you can pick up those peanuts with your chopsticks, then you have mastered the art. And we're like, are you kidding me? We're fiddling with it, and we're like, man, all of us wanted to throw that bowl of peanuts across the room. Like, this is crazy, this is frustrating. Like, it was hard. Got it down, but got some practice in there. Another thing that they prepared us for is the kind of toilets that they use over there. So they're called squatty potties because they're level with the ground, so you have to squat to use it. Hence the name, squatty potties. Yeah, isn't that fun? Woo! Another thing, do I have any fellow germaphobes here in the room? Anybody willing to admit with me that you don't like germs, like they bug you? Okay, so this will really bother you then. They don't all put food on their own plates all around the table. No, instead they all eat, they grab with their chopsticks off the dish and eat it, and then you spin it. It has a turntable, and you get something else. And so people are constantly sticking their chopsticks into the same dish. And, they have fish with the skin still on it, and, it's like, yeah. So that was fun. But you know what? I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to learn all the ways, but I ended up doing fine, and it was good, and we had a good mission trip. And actually, several of my friends ended up going back over, long term. We were there for 2 weeks, but one of my best friends went there for years, all because of that trip. So even though it was hard, we made it through it. Well, have you ever got caught in the trap of thinking, I can't do it? Like, have you ever thought to yourself, I just don't feel like I have much value to offer to the world? Maybe you're going through a tough time right now, and you'd really like to see the victory and see it turn out good. All right? If any of that is you, this is a good message for you today. In Judges chapter 6, you can go ahead and turn there. We have these Bibles that are scattered throughout under the tables or under your chairs, or you can use a Bible app. Doesn't matter to us. Lots of good Bible apps out there. You can use your phone. I like the YouVersion Bible app. Not me, but you, Y-O-U, YouVersion. You can use that. But in Judges 6, God approaches this humble farmer named Gideon. And this guy, even though he was just a humble farmer, God is going to do some great things through him. And we learn a lot of valuable life lessons. Like, if you've ever struggled with self-doubt, if you're going through a tough time where you need something good to happen, if you've ever wondered if God can really use you to accomplish his purposes, this message is for you this morning. All right, so let's start reading Judges 6, starting in verse 1. You can follow along with me. It says, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. That's pretty bad. They're having to hide out from these people in caves. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up their livestock and their tents like swarm. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. So they just swarmed in there, these people. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian was so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God, so do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But you have not listened to me." The angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." All right, so the first point for our lives that we learned today, if you're taking notes, is God sees more in us than we see in ourselves. God sees more in us than we see in ourselves. Gideon is threshing wheat in a wine press. Now, I didn't catch this until I started researching this for this message today, but as I was researching, it said he shouldn't have been threshing wheat down in an underground wine press. You would normally thresh wheat out in the open so that the wind could blow away the chaff of the wheat, right? He's threshing wheat in an underground wine press. Why? Because he's scared the Midianites are going to come in and take, after he's threshed all this wheat, they're going to steal it and take it from him, right? And so he's hiding out. He is hiding out. Why does God pick Gideon? Why Gideon? I mean, he's just a farmer, right? He has no self-confidence, apparently, and all he does have is excuses why he shouldn't be the one to do it. Why does God pick Gideon? I mean, if God were to put out a job posting on Indeed.com today and say, "I need someone brave to lead these people into battle," Gideon probably wouldn't have made the cut to even get into an interview, right? Like, can you imagine that interview? He's sitting in the interview and they're like, "Okay, so Gideon, tell us how you've been able to be successful in battle." And he's like, "I've never been in battle. I've never fought against anybody in battle." "Okay, well, can you tell us a time when you were leading others, where just any situation where you were able to lead others to do something?" He's like, "Yeah, I got nothing. Like, I've never led anybody for anything." Right? In fact, he's sitting there like, "God, I didn't even ask for this job. Like, I didn't even apply. You came to me. I don't want it." Right? Why does God choose Gideon? Because God is going to do things in such a way that he doesn't need someone with experience or skills. God is going to do things in such a way to show that God is the true leader that everybody should be looking to lead them. But I do think God was trying to get Gideon to believe in himself. I mean, notice the angel comes up and addresses Gideon as a mighty warrior, right? But guess what? He's not a mighty warrior when he says that. Gideon has not done anything to demonstrate he's a mighty warrior. God is not calling him as he is. He's calling him as he will be. Everybody catch that? He's calling him as what he will be. And so God, even though Gideon doesn't see it in himself, God can look and say, "I see a mighty warrior." and you're going to do great things. When you see what God does at the end of this story, you're going to look and you're saying, man, if God can do that with this untrained farmer in battle, I guess he could probably do some cool things through me also, right? God is calling people. And there are many people who don't believe that God can do anything great with them, right? There's a lot of people who sit there and be like, man, God, I don't have any special talents or special abilities. Like, find somebody else. But the whole point of what we're going to learn today is it's not about us. It's about what God can do through us. Amen? God wants to do some amazing things through every person in this room. He's trying to advance his kingdom. He has tasks that he needs done, and he's counting on us, and we can do this. So when you look in the mirror and you see a wimpy farmer, God sees a mighty warrior. When you look in the mirror and you see weakness, he sees, I have strength. When you look and you see hopeless situation, he sees your future victory, right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to sit on the sidelines, or are we going to step up to the front lines and advance his kingdom? Here's what I believe. What we all need to believe is if God calls us to do something for him, don't we believe he's going to give us whatever we need to accomplish that goal? Don't we believe that? And so what are we waiting for? Again, I'm so thankful that my wife Andrea was willing to get up on stage and give her testimony, because it just tied in so perfectly. Like, here's this person with low self-esteem. And did anybody relate to her story? Yeah? Okay, good. I hope that blessed somebody. Like, yes, you can have low self-esteem, but yes, God can bring you out of that and give you some confidence in him. And so we like to do what we call next steps. On the back of your program, it's ways to put into action what you're learning today. So the first point is start saying the daily declarations from Craig Groeschel in Impact Family Facebook group. All right, so these daily declarations, if you're not part of Impact Family group, you need to get part of this and see it. And if you're visiting here today, you'll get an invitation to the Impact Family Facebook group. But there are these daily declarations that Craig Groeschel does that are really awesome. You say them to yourselves daily, and it builds your self-confidence. So that would be the first one, is I'm going to start saying these daily declarations this week, right? If that's you, if you want to do that, you just check that box and make that as a goal. All right, let's skip to verse 33. Verse 33. Where it says, now all the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples joined forces and crossed over the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, calling them to arms, and also into Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, so that they too went up to meet them. Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said. And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece, but this time make the fleece dry and let the ground be covered with dew. That night God did so. Only the fleece was dry. All the ground was covered with dew. And so the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, right? He had taken a huge step of faith. The Spirit came upon him. He blew the horn, and people came from all over and rallied around him. Troops, he actually summoned 32,000 men. They show up ready to fight, right? It worked. Great victory for Gideon. God was with him, right? But then right after that, he turns around and he asks God for a sign, like, if this is going to happen, if we're going to win this victory. Man, isn't that just like us a lot of times, where God does these things in our life to show himself faithful? He did this for us. He did that for us. He provided for us in this way. He guided us in that way. But then when the next scary thing happens, it's like, oh no, I don't know if God can get me through this one, right? So I recently became a grandfather for the first time. Thank you. I didn't do anything, but thank you. I became a grandfather, and my son, the way my son Eric told me is he texted me and he said, "Hey, Dad, you need to be thinking about what name you want to be called as grandfather." I was like, "Oh, I see what you did there. She's pregnant, right?" So, but I still, the reality is I still haven't accepted it. I'm like, no, I'm not old enough to be a grandpa, right? Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for the support. Yeah, you are. Oh, you meant that in the most endearing way. Okay. Yeah, you're old enough. No, thank you. But I don't know about you, but I feel like anytime a baby is born and delivered, it's like a small miracle, right? Like I've seen 4 children of my own born now, and every time after the delivery happens, it's like all nervous and nerve-wracking, and then it happens, it's like, wow, a baby was born, a new life is here. Wow, this is awesome, right? And so I feel like every time is a miracle in a way, but I really do feel like this baby was a miracle baby. And I'll tell you why. So my daughter-in-law named Logan had a high-risk pregnancy. Before the pregnancy, she gave me permission to tell this, she had 4 miscarriages in like a year, which is just devastating. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a woman, but I can only imagine. It's devastating, 4 times in a year. And so it gets to the point where it's hard to get excited when you find out you're pregnant, right? Because you don't know if it's gonna stay, right? And so this baby, got a couple months through it, and she's still pregnant. We're still good, right? But many times throughout the pregnancy where they ask for prayers, difficulties, she's high risk. But we got to the delivery part, and she really wanted to have the baby natural and not have to do a C-section because she had been on blood thinners. And so obviously you don't want to slice somebody open when they've been on blood thinners. They could bleed out, if you're not careful. And so they're asking for prayer while she's in delivery. Don't you know that baby was born naturally, no C-section. It only took 39 hours of labor, just 39 hours. But we have a baby, yes. Beautiful baby girl named Annalise. And what a blessing, what a blessing. And so here's the baby pics. And so with 2 of my children, we had a midwife who delivered the 2 of our children. She had delivered over 900 babies. And so I was pretty confident she's probably going to be able to handle our babies, right? 900, that's pretty good. But she had this thing where she said, if a baby was born and it was attractive, if it was a good-looking baby, she'd say, oh, what a beautiful baby. But if it was not so attractive, she'd go, sweet baby. Sweet baby. Well, I think we have a beautiful baby. Beautiful baby. And I shared that story with a friend of the family about how all the circumstances of the miscarriage and everything. And I shared with her, and she said, Jeremy, I think that was a miracle too. And she said, I'm going to share a Bible verse with you. And she shared this verse. Since ancient times, no one has heard, no ear has perceived, no eye has seen any God besides you who acts on behalf of those who wait for him. And he acted on our behalf, and he answered our prayer, and we're so thankful for this grandbaby. But I guess the point to me is, for us, is why did we ever doubt? I mean, God has brought us through so many things. He showed himself faithful so many times. But then when this situation comes up, it's kind of scary, we don't know, we get worried, right? Man, we got to trust that God is faithful. Like, notice, so he does this fleece test. God has shown up already in Gideon's life. He brought an army, right? Blew the horn, Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and here's this army. God's already shown up in his life, but here he is doing this test. All right, God, hey, if I'm really going to win this battle, give me a sign. Give me a sign. But you know what? This doubting Thomas of the Old Testament, but God graciously confirms his power in Gideon's life. He gives him an answer. Aren't you glad God is patient with us? Aren't you glad that he walks with us along the faith journey? Aren't you glad he doesn't get mad and say, how dare you ask me for a sign, and zaps us, right? I mean, the beautiful thing about God is God is willing to meet us where we are, wherever we're at in our faith journey. I mean, we could be here at the very beginning where we're not even sure if God exists, and God will meet you right there, wherever you are in the journey, and he will walk with you. Isn't that awesome? He will meet you and help you in that process. So I have another couple of next steps here. Ask God to give confirmation to a decision you're trying to make. If that's you, if you want to do that this week, check that off. And then ask God to give you answers to your questions about your belief in God. And so if that's you and you want to do that, check that box, make that as a goal. All right, let's wrap up our story here, chapter 7, Judges chapter 7. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. Can you imagine that? 22,000 people went away after he just said, "Hey, if any of you are afraid." 22,000 gone. Man. But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men." If I'm Gideon, I'm like, wait, what? What are you saying? You're saying I have too many? No. I need as many as I can get, right? There's still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, "Separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink." 3,000 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, "With the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home." So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. Man, can you imagine how Gideon must have felt? I mean, this is crazy, right? If you're Gideon, you're thinking, this is crazy. Chapter 8 tells us that the Midianites had 135,000 soldiers. And so by the time Israel, they pared them down to 300, you're left with a 450-1 ratio of Midianites to Israelites. Those aren't very good odds. I mean, if I'm Gideon, I'm not liking those odds. I'm like, we need to beef this up here, right? But God created an impossible situation of human weakness to exalt his name and show his power. Which reminds me of 2 Corinthians 12:9, where the Apostle Paul is talking about how he had this thorn in the flesh, and we don't know exactly what it was. He calls it a messenger of Satan that was tormenting him. And it says he asked 3 times for God to take this bad thing away. And God said no. He said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And he said, "For when I am weak, then he is strong." And so God sometimes almost makes it to where it's a situation of weakness so that he can show his power in our lives. You know, we tend to think it's all about our power, our knowledge, our strategy to get things done. But the truth is, God is looking to glorify himself on earth through people who are fully dependent on him, who believe he is with him and are ready to charge the hill in the name of the Lord. The truth is, God doesn't need us at all. He just invites us in to do his will. And when we do, we reap the benefits and he gets the glory. It happened in Israel in one of the strangest battles in history. It really is strange. The 300 went out with trumpets, torches, and jars, and God just caused confusion among the Midianites. They actually turned on each other. The Israelites never had to lift a finger. They turned on each other, 120,000 Midianites killed each other, and then the rest of the 15,000 fled and ran away. Israel didn't have to do a thing. Are you trying to do things in your own strength or in God's strength? In God's strength. That was a picture. They had a cutout picture where you can stick your head through at Cedar Point. And so I stuck my head in there and got a picture. Are you trying to do things in your own strength or in God's strength? The Bible says, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. It's not by our power that's going to accomplish these great things. Notice why God says he needs to cut down the number of people, so that Israel can't boast and say, we saved, we did this great thing by our mighty power. No, he saved it for his mighty power, so that no one who knew what happened could even possibly say it was the Israelites' army. Everyone who knew what happened said, oh, that was God. That was nothing but God, right? And so the next step, God is looking for people who want to make his name famous. And so the next step is, I'm going to take actions this week that make God's name famous, such as making a Facebook post about God or any other way. And so God always sees more in ourselves than we see in ourselves. Do you believe that God can do great things through you? Do you believe that? God is patient with our faith process. He meets you right where you are and gives you what you need. What next steps in your faith journey do you need to take? Success is determined by God's power, not ours. Will you trust him today with your finances, with your decisions, with your children, with your marriage, with your life? Will you trust him for him to lead you and show up